BBC News. President Trump says he believes the war with Iran is almost complete. He said Iran has no leadership and no navy or air force. The United States and Israel have continued the bombardment of Iran, with powerful explosions heard in Tehran on the 11th day of this campaign. Iran, though, is still retaliating, and the Republican Guards mocked Mr. Trump's remarks, saying it would be they who determined when the conflict ended. Well, let's discuss this with Gina Abercrombie-Winstanley, Distinguished Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Welcome to BBC News.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What is your take on all of this? We are now in day 11 and the hostilities are ramping up still.
Yeah, day 11. And many people are surprised about that because there was an expectation that this would go rather quickly. We had a lot of confidence in the early days, certainly from the Secretary of Defense and the President, that this was going well. The President even today said that the United States and Israel are ahead of schedule. But there are other notes coming out from the president as well. We've seen the goals change day by day. And he just said yesterday that he would be the determinant of what unconditional surrender is. And I think we have a bit more space today for the United States to find an off-ramp, a way to declare victory in a fairly short period of time, because he's feeling that pressure on oil prices and the lack of domestic support.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, with the numbers of fatalities in the US military going up, there's that as well, adding to that pressure, domestic pressure, as it were. But you say that, you know, they're surprised within the Trump administration that this was not quicker. I wonder why they were surprised, because, Gina, so many people that we have spoken to since talk about the fact that this was never, ever going to be easy, that Iran is a force, that they had a strategy, they were ready for this.
Absolutely. And those who have worked or studied, analyzed the region over time certainly would have those expectations. Those are people who are not necessarily in the lead in this administration. That's reality. The State Department has largely been sidelined. We see that the lead negotiators were those who had close personal relationships with the president, as opposed to knowledge of their partners across the negotiating table. So that may explain part of it. And we have many, many examples in the past of miscalculations, certainly from the United States, going all the way back to Vietnam, where there was an expectation of overwhelming air power to bring the adversary to heel, and it just does not work that way.
Gina, I'm interested. You talk about the fact that President Trump is, you know, aware of an off-ramp now, and this time yesterday when we saw oil prices soaring and stock markets in Asia tanking, you kind of had a sense that this would add serious pressure on President Trump and his team. However, what about Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu? He does not want this to end anytime soon. He wants to see his goals achieved, which is the complete annihilation of Iran, isn't it?
That is absolutely correct. And there was always a possibility that the goals of the United States and Israel might separate. For the Israelis, it's existential. For the Iranians, it's existential. But for the United States, it is not. The weapons that we were worried about with Iran, whether it was their missile program, could not reach the United States. There is no proof that the Iranians were close to a nuclear weapon. Certainly, the president said they were obliterated, their capabilities in June. So it's hard for Americans to understand why this was so necessary now. And the Israelis do want to continue to end the Iranian regime from their perspective. That's what makes sense. But that is not what makes sense for the United States.
What makes sense for the Gulf. I mean, whilst all this is going on, you've got, of course, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Dubai, all these, the UAE, all these key economies and partners with the US under fire. How is this going to change the relationships going forward?
Well, that will depend on how this war ends, under what circumstances. Our allies in the region did caution the United States not to do this, but to do it well if we did in the end. And they didn't have control over it, even though they were the ones that were going to face the greatest pressure. And their expectations, predictions have indeed turned out to be true. They're taking horrific heat during this war on their infrastructure, on their economies, and on their people. So, how the United States ends this war and whether it leaves Iran in the same position where they might menace their neighbors in the Gulf, or whether indeed there is a new leadership, a new way of going forward from the Iranian regime that leaves the Gulf states in a more secure position.
But we don't see a new leadership, or do we? What's your take, Gina, on the new supreme leader and how he will lead Iran?
Well, I think there is the expectation that he will be as hardline as his father. And that is because the power remains with the IRGC, who is largely responsible, that organization, for allowing him to be in this position. Because strictly speaking, based on credentials, he was not eligible to be the supreme leader. But the IRGC wanted him, and therefore he's in that position.
We haven't got much time left, but from your perspective, what is the best end, therefore, to this war?
Yeah. Well, best end is hard to say. Uh, it's going to be difficult for the United States and certainly for Israel to come out with a regime that looks exactly the same. The president wants someone he can work with. He, was looking for the Venezuelan option, as we talk about, even if it is a regime elements that they will at least talk to the United States and leave that missile program weaker, the proxies without support, and of course, no nuclear capability.
Yeah. Gina, thank you for talking to us once again and sharing your thoughts on these latest developments. Gina Abercrombie-Winstanley there from Atlantic Council. And just to say, we've got business